So we are doing a famous artist portrait charcoal drawing. We're going to be using some techniques. We're going to be using the...
Miss Berenger, you're frozen. Oh, wait, did
Oh,
she?
there I am. Yeah, that's weird.
Oh,
I disappeared for a second and now I'm back. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? Can you see my screen? No, you cannot. Okay.
no.
Let's fix that. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. I think we're good to go, right? You can see my screen and you can hear my voice. All right, cool. Okay, so we're going to be doing something called the famous artist portrait, and we're going to be using charcoal to do this, and two different techniques. One is called additive, and the other method is called subtractive. So reminding you that we talked about already the elements of art, and we're going to be using a couple of these in this drawing. So the elements of art are the building blocks to create the principles of design, and we learned about line, texture, form, shape, space, value, and color. So just thinking about, the fact that we're going to be doing a drawing of the face and we're going to use charcoal, which one of these elements do you think we're going to be using? Or which couple of them do you think we're going to be using? Just shout it out.
Texture and value.
Texture and value. Good. Any others?
Line?
Line. We could use line, especially like in the hair and the eyebrows.
I was going to say form, but I don't think so.
Well, form's tricky because as a visual artist, and especially one that's using something like charcoal where we're trying to make it look like it's a form, right? A three-dimensional object, but we really are working two-dimensionally. So we're going to be dealing with shapes, but we're trying to make it look like form. So kind of both, right?
Yeah, a bit of a yes, a bit of a no.
Yeah, exactly. Any other thoughts?
Is color one of them? Because, like, when you blend, like, the charcoal, at first it's black, and then it turns gray, and then it turns, like, a super light gray.
That's a good thought. We are going to be drawing in black and white. So we're not going to be using any color. Instead, you'd want to call it value, right? We're going to be using a range from light to dark with no color. So good guesses, guys. So that brings me actually to talking about value. So we can have value with color and we can have value without color. So we're going to be working on this top one here because charcoal is just black. And we're going to be using the additive and subtractive techniques and the white of our paper to get a whole range of values from light to really dark, depending on what we're drawing, right? And in order to do this, in order to make our two-dimensional circular shape, or our face, like the cheeks and the nose and all the things, look three-dimensional, we need to think about the light source and where the light is coming from and how it's hitting the face. And where is it brighter and where is it darker? So this simple sphere is a really good example of exactly what you're going to be doing when you draw your face. So what are the things on our face that stick out the most?
Color.
Your nose. Your nose sticks out. It's like sticks out as in like actually sticks out, right? Not like we notice it, but it sticks out. So our nose sticks out. What other elements on our face might stick out further than others?
Ears.
Your ears.
Would your hair count or no?
Your hair counts, yeah. Your eyebrows, right?
Eyelash. Your eyelashes.
Your lips, your eyelashes, your cheekbones.
Everything except the skin.
Everything except the skin. So there's flat parts of our face and there's parts that stick out a little further. And when your mustache, exactly. When something sticks out, it's going to catch the light. So that needs to be lighter or brighter in our drawing. And when something falls behind or in underneath something, it gets a shadow, right? So we're going to learn how to do those. So what is charcoal? Well, there's different types of charcoal. Charcoal is really just like burnt sticks, really what it is. How many people here have gone camping and the next morning taken out some of the pieces of wood that have been burning in the fire and drawn on the rocks with them?
Never done that.
Never done that?
They all turn to ash.
It turns so they've burned too much.
I've done that, and I've done it, and it sometimes makes actual color if you rub it on a rock.
If you see some color in there, yeah, so it depends on what's in the stick, right? Like, for example, the stick could have like red iron oxide in it or something and it would turn red. Right, so that's what charcoal is, okay? So there's different types of charcoal. There's a compressed charcoal, which is what you guys are going to be using. And this is just like you ground up all the burnt sticks and you mix a little binder in it, like a little glue, and then they compress it, squish it together into a stick. So it's a little bit darker and more dense than the vine. Vine charcoal is basically your burnt stick. You can buy it and you can draw with it. It's really like a really soft gray. It's very light. And then charcoal also comes in pencils and with different like weighted leads. So you could have a darker charcoal pencil and a lighter, harder charcoal pencil. So it really just depends on what you buy and what you're using. We're going to be using just the compressed charcoal for this drawing. All right, so here's some examples of some charcoal drawings that look extremely realistic. So for this drawing, we're going for more of an A than a B, right? We're going for more of a realistic drawing of a person than a subjective or unrealistic drawing of a person. So here's some examples of some charcoal drawings. This like mushroom cloud and this mask. Drawing things that are really reflective is kind of fun with charcoal because you can really make it look real by drawing the reflection. Here's some faces and some intense eyes and some skin, different examples of what you might be drawing.
Those are so cool.
Yeah, these are just, what was that first question? I heard a voice.
On the second slide of like the that one, yeah, I love the eyes.
The eyes are really beautiful, yeah. One of the tricks to the eyes, and I'll teach you this, is you see those little white dots?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reflection of the light that's in the space in the room. That will make an eye look very realistic. Dramatic. Charcoal can be really dramatic. We don't even see the rest of the shark's body. He's just like jumping out of the water at us. Scary. This artist here, he uses something called white charcoal. There's such a thing as white charcoal. And he uses it to get the highlights on the face. We're not going to be using white charcoal, but we're going to be erasing. So we're going to be using the white of the paper. You can get realism with texture. If you zoomed into his face, you're going to see a bunch of lines. So that's a possibility. And here's some more examples. So some of his portraits are realistic in certain areas, and then he uses some other techniques to make it unrealistic, like dripping. I think this is like mineral spirits or alcohol, something you would wash a brush with on the charcoal and letting it drip down the canvas. So additive charcoal is when you add charcoal to your page, and subtractive is when you erase. Pretty simple. So here's an example of additive. So this is the finished drawing, and this is what it looks like when it first starts. So you kind of block out the value first, and then you start getting some of the details, and it looks like he's starting to add some of the white charcoal in the background, more shadows on the face, making it look more three-dimensional, and then, making the background really white, adding even a shadow behind her makes her even more realistic. Okay, so famous artists using charcoal. So just some examples. We got Vincent van Gogh, Dutch post-impressionist. What do you notice about these charcoal drawings? What are some of the things you notice?
They're both are using lines, and they kind of look like they're in the olden days.
So the olden days, well, it is kind of the olden days, 1853 to 1890. So I'm guessing these drawings were made around, in the 1880s, possibly, or the early, the late 1880s. He died young, so not really young, but he wasn't an old man when he died. So these were probably done closer to his death date here. So they look kind of older. Like, and what tells you that, Tabasum? Why do
Well,
they
it
look?
tells me that because, like, in the olden days, they're like people like were like their houses were made like really poorly, and like they had stuff that is like, I don't know how to really explain it.
I think you're explaining it really well. So you see the structure of the houses looks older, and then the objects they have with them, like baskets and sticks and tools and things that we don't necessarily use now. And what are they doing?
Farming or
Hmm.
harvesting.
Yeah, exactly. So they're farming and harvesting, and in their clothing also tells us this too. Um, it looks 3D. I'm not monitoring the chat, but I will glance at it once in a while here. Okay, here is Paul Gauguin. He was a French post-impressionist. He was also friends with Vincent van Gogh, and he did a lot of drawings of women that lived on a native island that he lived on. I can't. The name of it's blank. I'm blanking on it right now, but I'll look that up if you're curious. Yeah, so these are just simple charcoal drawings. Some of them are more realistic than others, but he was a painter. So a lot of these drawings are like sketches before the painting happens. So you might find a famous painting of his that looks very similar to the drawing. Mary Cassatt, famous American painter, famous for painting women and children. And she used a lot of colored pastel in her work as well. David Hockney, who I think you guys have learned about already, English painter, still living, and he does portraits and he also does landscapes and a lot of charcoal. All right, so what are we doing for this project? Using these methods that I'm going to teach you, you're going to draw a portrait of a famous visual artist. You're going to watch my demos, so don't skip ahead and think you have to finish it all in one session. We're going to focus on the composition, so the placement of things within that picture plane. Symmetrical balance, right, because we're drawing a human and they're fairly the same on both sides. We're going to sketch out the shapes first, add the charcoal, subtract the charcoal, and then work on focus on texture and value and line to get the details. So reminding you what texture is. We have tactile texture, which is like you can actually touch it. Visual texture is when you see it and it looks like something that you could touch. And we're going to practice different types of textures with the charcoal. Hair, smooth hair, curly hair, fabric. Maybe you choose a person that has like an interesting outfit on. How to draw the eye and the lips and maybe even beards, depending on who you choose. Focusing on that symmetrical balance, the same on both sides. And here's some examples of some famous visual artists. You can choose one of these, but you do not have to. You can choose your own person. It's up to you. I just want you to find a good photo of them because you're going to be trying to draw them realistically. You need a nice high resolution image. If this is a person that was born before photography was invented, which was, like the early 1900s, then you can find a painting or a drawing of that person. Okay, so we got Pablo Picasso, Yoko Ono. Does anyone know who Yoko is? You heard her name before?
Never heard of her.
No? Do you know who the Beatles are? The band The Beatles?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so she was married to John Lennon, one of the Beatles, and she was a famous conceptual artist. Still is. She's still living. Okay, so she's actually a favorite of mine. That's why I threw her in here. Jean-Michel Basquiat. We've talked about him before. Famous African-American painter. Anish Kapoor, Indian, and famous for making very large-scale sculptures that are focused on light and color. Frida Kahlo, and you guys know her, famous Mexican painter, really famous for painting self-portraits. Auguste Rodin was a sculptor, kind of known as the father of modern sculpture. Vincent van Gogh, Paul Gauguin, we looked at some of their work. So you would be finding self-portrait paintings of them if you wanted to do them. Mary Cassatt, this is actually a photograph of Mary Cassatt. So this is one of the early photographs. Kiki Smith is one of my favorites. She's a sculptor. And if you wanted to do someone as old as Da Vinci, you would find an old painting. Camille Claudel was a sculptor, and she was actually the assistant of Auguste Rodin, but very, very, very skilled sculptor. Tala.
So are we allowed to pick anyone, or does it have to be from this slideshow?
You can pick anyone you want as long as they are a visual artist. Anyone throughout time. As long as they're a visual artist and you can find a good image to copy. Any other questions? Not music, visual arts. I want you to learn about visual artists since this is the visual arts class.
They have to be human.
Yes. We're going to learn about human proportions, how to draw the human.
Do they have to be
head.
like very old people or dead people?
No, they can be living today. As long as they're visual artists. Now you could do Frida Kahlo. You could find your own image of Frida Kahlo, any one of her paintings. You could do any one of these people and find your own image of them. These are kind of just examples to show you. Any other questions? Tala?
When is this assignment due?
Well, I don't like to give the due date for the whole thing right away because I feel like that's a little bit stressful. So what I'm going to do is every class period, I will give you a goal and you'll post a WIP so we can kind of keep on track with that. And then when we're about halfway done with the project, I will give you a due date for the final drawing. But you do not need to do this on your own time. You're going to be working on this with me in class. So my recommendation is to not skip ahead. Okay, just to kind of follow along with me in class. So today I'm going to show you how to get started on this. Actually, let me stop my video. And I think I'm going to